Hello, and welcome to the 12th episode of the SkillShine25 podcast. My name is Veer, a local high schooler, and I'm joined by my friend Meredith. Today we're speaking with Miss June Taylor, who serves as Executive Director and Head of Consumer Risk Programs, Product and Change Delivery at Wells Fargo. It's a hefty title. She's spent her career leading business transformation and technology strategy across companies like Caterpillar, Bank of America, and Wells Fargo, helping organizations improve systems, processes, and innovation on a large scale. Ms. Taylor, thank you so much for joining us today. We'll let you introduce yourself.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Yes, I'm June Taylor, and as Veer mentioned, I'm currently at Wells Fargo, but spent my early part of my career in manufacturing and then changed to banking halfway through. So had a diverse and interesting career and lots of fun opportunities that I'm happy to share, and hopefully will help some others make decisions on what you want to do.
Thank you so much. Our pleasure. And we appreciate you for being with us today. You've worked across industries from manufacturing and supply chain to financial services and technology. What first inspired you to pursue a career focused on business transformation?
Yeah, so when I was thinking about careers at the same stage that you guys are in, I really had no idea what I wanted to do, as I think is totally normal. And at the time, my vision for my career was basically I wanted to work in an office, 9 to 5-ish, and get to wear cute clothes. And so I was thinking of maybe something in business. Mm-hmm. And I went with a friend on a college tour, and it was actually at the University of Tennessee. I didn't go there, but that's a school she was looking at. And we met with a professor, and he was a professor of industrial engineering, and he explained to us how industrial engineering was like a business engineering degree. And he encouraged us that if we thought we could get through the math that's involved with engineering, that this might be an alternative to business that is more geared towards innovation and strategy and has a broad applicability across businesses. Wow. So that's how I ended up with that degree.
Yeah, I mean, so often now you get to see how business is really connected with any field, mm-hmm. right? Anything that really works in this world is involved with a business.
Sure.
And it's so important to get an understanding of that.
Mm-hmm.
Was there a defining moment early in your journey when you realized this is what I'm meant to do?
Yes, it took a while. When I was in college, it was sometimes difficult, and I was questioning whether I really wanted to stick it out with engineering. I came from a small town, and I wasn't as well prepared as a lot of other students when I started at NC State, which is where I got my engineering degree. So I went into that not having calculus or physics in high school, and having to kind of catch up. And I wasn't really sure, why I was putting in such effort and what was I going to do with this when I got out of school, and was I even going to like what I did when I got out of school. Luckily, my junior year, I think it was the beginning of my third year, I had a internship opportunity. We called it co-oping back then, but I started working, and I worked for the same company for 4 semesters, alternating with school. So to go to semester school, a semester working, and back and forth until I'd worked there 4 semesters. And that gave me over a year's work experience and really changed my whole perspective, because I didn't love school, but I loved working. And once I could see what I was going to be doing and how my future would look, it motivated me to put in the work and finish, because I was confident that I would be happy once I got out.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. I mean, that's exactly what we're trying to look at now, right? We're trying to help kids get that real world experience, because it's so valuable, right? There's such a big disconnect between what you learn in school and what the actual career is.
Yes.
And it's so important to actually get an understanding of what that is at a younger age.
It's very true. I don't think I would have finished my degree if I had not interned like that and really gain that knowledge of what I could do with it and what my life would look like and why it was worth it.
Yeah, it's you see the job on paper, you're like, oh, that seems interesting, maybe something I want to do, but until you just step into those shoes, you really don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And what did that internship involve for you?
So I was working for a manufacturing company. It was an electronics company, and I did a lot of work on prototyping, which was fun. We had like a prototype lab where we built prototypes of the electronic products that we were making, so I got to do like some hands-on. It involved a lot of time studies. So in industrial engineering, traditionally, it's a lot about process control and process efficiency. So there was a lot of writing out process procedures for the manufacturing people to follow. So, and that involved finding the most efficient way to build something and doing time studies to try out those different ways. Also time studies to help with planning so that they could business plan how much they could build of product in a certain time, and how to, and that also ties into costing the product, because the labor costs are a piece of it. And so a lot of hands-on time spent on the manufacturing floor, watching and learning and getting to contribute right away to those processes, which was exciting.
Yeah, wow. You've held leadership roles in massive organizations. What does a typical day look like for you as executive director at Wells Fargo?
It's a lot of meetings. I have often 13 meetings in a day.
Wow.
Mostly 30-minute meetings, and mostly, well, with my team and with partnering teams to organize activities around the projects that we're running. Those are technology efforts and non-tech efforts, but a lot of direction setting, coaching, working through obstacles, sharing information, making sure everybody's staying on track on the goals and objectives and timelines. Yes, a lot of meetings.
I mean, one of my favorite questions to ask when talking about these face-to-face, almost group-oriented roles is, how did COVID affect it?
Well, I think COVID, we still kept working, and we can work remotely pretty effectively nowadays with the tools that we have. And actually, I feel like we sometimes connected a little more personally during COVID, because everyone was at home and you'd see the background in people's homes. You'd see their kids walking up and, interjecting in the meetings. So in some ways, it actually created more personal connections during that time, even though we were distanced from each other. And we definitely, kept working. I think there was some acknowledgement and acceptance of some people probably couldn't put in as many hours or didn't have the amount of focus that they could normally have because of being home with kids and things. But we kept things going, and I think we were closer coming out of it.
That's very interesting. I mean, a lot of people say they like to keep work and their personal life separate, right? Because it makes them more efficient, makes them better workers. But from what you're saying, it's almost that it created better connections by having that work and personal life aspect.
Yeah, I mean, there's a professionalism that you have to have when you're in an office, and this is a lot of, I think, what you learn when you get out of school and start working, is sort of those boundaries around being professional and knowing how to present yourself professionally, but also being able to be personal and make personal connections. And I think that's very important. There's actually been studies that teams that talk about non-work things are much more high-performing teams than teams that only focus on work.
Wow.
And I think that's very true. I have several people that I work with that have worked for me for 10 plus years across multiple companies. And we have very deep connection personally and professionally. And because of those personal connections, they trust me, and I trust them. And that's really the basis of any relationship. And I definitely think it enables teams to perform better when there's that level of trust, which really can only come with opening yourself up and being vulnerable and being honest and connecting as your true self with other people.
Wow.
You started your career at Caterpillar and even spent time in India. How did those early experiences shape your leadership style or global perspective?
Yeah. Caterpillar had actually a really big influence on my leadership style and a lot of what I just was talking about, which is my leadership style. Caterpillar was a very team-based company, and employees were really encouraged to work together as a team to get the job done. And I really carried that forward in my career. And obviously having the global perspective that I had with Caterpillar was valuable to just my own personal growth and leadership journey. I lived in India for almost a year, but even prior to that, I had responsibilities across the UK and the US, and traveled quite a bit to the UK and Europe and Mexico, because we have manufacturing in Mexico, so I would go there multiple times, and then ultimately did an assignment where I lived in India and traveled for work within India and Southeast Asia, and really gained still, I think, some of the same reinforcement of the same types of skills and leadership skills and knowledge that I've been talking about around just team building, making connections with people, and that can be across cultures, across, boundaries, whether you're doing it over the phone or doing it in person. I think, that just gave me even more experience with how to make those connections and lead people with different backgrounds and different experiences and live those different experiences. So that gave me a great appreciation for others who have made changes in their life that have brought them into different locations or different industries, because it is hard to make those kinds of shifts and to be immersed in a culture that's different than your own and be able to function and figure out how to get things done, because we don't realize when you grow up in one specific culture or one specific area how much knowledge you've gained just because you've been surrounded by the same ways of doing things your whole life. And so if you need to mail a package or get internet connection set up, how to do that. You've seen your parents do, other people do it, how to get that, how to research and how to make take the necessary steps to get that done. When you come here from another country, that's all foreign to you, and you have to figure out all those things that we just grew up knowing. You have to learn for yourself, as well as cultural norms, which is so difficult. There's so much nonverbal communication that we're not aware of, that you have, as someone coming from another country, has to learn how to decipher those social cues, and and then also how to portray those same traits to fit in. So I have a lot of respect for people who do that, because it's really, really hard to do and to excel in your job or your schoolwork or any of those things.
Yeah, that is a skill. I mean, it's one thing to tell people what to do, right? But it's another thing to actually understand their situation, find the similarities and differences that on paper may seem so vastly different, but we're all human.
Yep.
We all share similar features, similar qualities, and that's what really makes us connected and strong.
Yeah, and that's part of being a leader, is being empathetic, to others and understanding their situation and where they're coming from. It helps you build consensus with teams and again, trust.
Yeah. You lead initiatives that integrate technology, innovation, and risk management. What's the key to keeping teams motivated when projects are complex or high pressure?
I think, again, it's teamwork and knowing that you're all in it together. I work really closely with technology, though they're in a different organization. So I sit in consumer lending, so that's a very large line of business within Wells Fargo. and I am responsible for applications that are used within consumer risk programs for Wells Fargo. But the building of those applications is done by my technology partner. And so my team and his team have to work really closely together, and we need each other to be successful. And so it goes back to, again, trust and team building, so that the teams know they're all in it together, that it's that we're not focused on whose fault it is if something goes wrong, or who we're going to blame. We're focused on what went wrong, how are we going to learn from it, how do we move together, how do we make it right, most importantly. Like because in technology there's often things go wrong, as you experience in your daily lives with whatever, Teams not working, any of your phone issues. But whenever that happens, we just pull together and focus on the root cause of the problem, getting it fixed, and how we're going to move forward together.
Yeah.
You've worked with technologies like AI and data analytics. How do you see those shaping the future of business and the skills students will need?
That's a great question, and one that I think a lot of people are trying to figure out. I'm old enough to have lived through the internet revolution. I was really early in my career when the internet kind of came out in the same way that took off in the same way, I would say, as AI is today. And we had all these initiatives that were called things like e-business and e-procurement, and E in front of everything to figure out how to do these things with the internet. And now we just do that as part of every day. Nobody thinks about how are you going to do something on the internet, because it's just a way of life. And I think that's what AI is going to be. It's just going to be ingrained in our and I think it's very similar to, it may be even just an extension of the internet change that happened in around 2000, that now that's just the progression of technology from that point forward. It's a natural progression.
That's an interesting way of looking at it. You're right, we see AI slapped on the name of everything now, right? Just like you're saying about email, everything with E. And I'm starting to think maybe eventually you don't even see the AI as part of it. It's just going to be ingrained into the system.
Yeah, and the roots of AI we can trace back from decades ago. So it really started with, it's a lot of mathematics, a lot of statistics, and data analytics and statistics that have been around for a long time. But it used to be, again, tying it back to my time studies when I was an intern, we had to gather data with a stopwatch, doing time studies and writing things down. So data was really scarce and really valuable. And you had to use a lot of statistical techniques to try to maximize the output of that data and how you can make good decisions with very limited data. And to do that, you would use a lot of statistical analysis, and you would only gather as much data as you had to have, because it was so expensive and timely and costly to gather that data. Well, now, once the internet came, this is why I say it's a kind of a natural progression. With the internet, we capture just so much data all the time. And it started with purchasing data, but then it expanded to all of our conversations, and everything is running across the internet. So data is no longer scarce or costly, it's just available in masses. So now we can make really accurate predictions based upon this data, because we have tons of it, right? So it's really, that's the progression of moving from having doing the same techniques but with limited data, to now being able to accelerate all of that decision making and prediction, because you just have such massive amounts of data to do that on. So now it's more okay, how do we harness that? And that's what's happening with AI, is they're harnessing that data and applying mathematic models to language, right? That's how large language models work. So ChatGPT and Copilot, it looks at the words that are used together in combination, and statistically what's the next set of words that most people say. So it's just math behind this data of words that they're able to predict what you should say next, or what would be said next.
It's almost like the internet gave you the problem, they gave you the setup, they gave you all the graphs and the data, And then now AI is able to analyze all that information and predict it further.
Yep.
So in terms of data that you're referencing right now, is that in reference to risk management and how you look at your job on a more overall point?
Yes. So there's a lot of data involved in a lot of different aspects of risk, and there's lots of different types of risk in the bank and different ways that people are using technology to mitigate risks. So I don't work in like fraud, but that's a huge area, is fraud and financial crimes. So that's an area that's really booming right now, especially with AI, to try to decipher any risk of fraud or deceptive practices, and so that's a big area. My area, I work more on regulations or government regulations that the bank needs to adhere to, and we do a lot of data collection and analysis to, one, share with regulators so they can evaluate our performance. We get graded on our performance against these regulations. But second, to measure how well internally we're doing. So being in consumer, we're concerned with consumer risk especially around inconsistent lending. So unfair lending practices is a big area that we're focused on. So we want to understand both like demographically and by location. Are we serving our customers consistently and fairly across those demographics and across those locations? So it's a lot of the data we collect is around those lending transactions and how they compare across these different demographics. And that helps us make sure that internally that good decisions are being made, and we're not at risk of any unfair activities, and then also that we'll perform well under examination with the regulators.
Wow.
What leadership principles guide your day-to-day decisions, especially when you're leading large teams through change?
I've shared some of those already, so I'll try to think of some other common practices in the day-to-day. I think another is just communication. So when you're doing large changes, especially, a lot of thought needs to be put into how to articulate and communicate the change in a way that's meaningful for those impacted by the change. So looking at, who's impacted, how are they going to be impacted, what do they need in order to prepare for the change. So that's another key area for large change, is to understand, again, first who all is going to be impacted, and then how you're going to reach them, how you're going to communicate to them.
Change is never easy. What is one challenge or setback that taught you an important lesson about resilience or problem solving?
Oh, wow. I think a very common problem that we face in change, and I think it's all change, but when you're dealing with technology changes, it's very obvious and measurable, and that's adoption of change. So my team, in partnership with technology, builds a lot of new technology solutions, and sometimes we struggle with getting users to adopt new technology. And it could even, be clear that the new technology works better and is more efficient and more user-friendly and has more capabilities, but people tend to resist change. And if they're comfortable doing something, even if it takes more time, doing something new at first is always going to take more time, just because you don't know how to do it. You have to go through that learning curve. And that's a big challenge, especially if you're talking about like big corporate America, where people may have been doing the same job the same way for a long time, so they're not as naturally receptive to change. And then to try to get them to move forward with something new can be a bit challenging. Often it takes a decision like taking away the old technology and only enabling the new technology. There's always kind of a pushback from that. There's always a period of inefficiency with that. So that's a hard decision to make at times. But often it's sort of the only way you can move forward with certain changes.
Mm-hmm.
You've managed transformation at a massive scale. What's one part of that process that people would be surprised to learn about behind the scenes?
Oh, that's a great question. How people would be surprised about. You're stretching me of thinking about what other people know and don't know. Maybe what people don't know is how much of that is luck, to be honest, because you can have the best laid plans, but things don't always go as you predicted, and sometimes you get lucky and sometimes you don't. Sometimes the best ideas fail, and sometimes something you didn't expect to be successful takes off. So I think that there is, with most things in life, it's a combination of hard work and making smart decisions and most likely a bit of luck.
Yeah, a lot of people I think just see something like Wells Fargo and think, oh, it's just one dimensional. It's a bank, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just all they're doing is managing the money, but in reality, there's just so much more that you don't see on the scale. It's like even with your profession, right? You're starting to see how they're not just looking at what they have, they're looking at what they could have, and they're looking at what could change. And I think that is very important in terms of just, not just professionally, but in terms of life skills. How you need to always be predicting what's happening.
Yep.
Keeping it in account.
Yes, and though I work in financial services, to run a bank, there's all kinds of different disciplines involved. There's, being in regulatory, I work with a lot of lawyers, and you probably wouldn't think like you'd get a law degree and work for a bank, but there's tons of lawyers in banking because of regulations. It's a very heavily regulated sector. And there's also banks are huge technology companies. I mean, all of banking happens through digital transactions, and there's billions of digital transactions happening across financial institutions every day. So by virtue of that, we're technology companies in banking.
You've mentioned the importance of continuous improvement through Lean and Six Sigma. How has that mindset helped you grow personally and professionally?
Yeah. So Six Sigma, for those who don't know, it's a methodology that was developed and really promoted initially by Toyota in something called the Toyota Production System. This was a very long time ago, but Toyota is known for making really high quality automobiles, and they were a leader in the automobile industry specifically for their quality and reliability, and their methods for that were adopted and adapted to many other sectors and packaged in something called Six Sigma. It's really based on traditional quality control methodologies that are the type of thing you learn as an industrial engineer in college, really focused on that quality and efficiency. And when I was at Caterpillar, this was a big movement, and I was very fortunate to be selected. You had to be appointed by your business unit to go through the Six Sigma training, and specifically to become what I am, which is the Master Black Belt, which is the highest level of education you can get in that discipline. And that involves coaching and training what are called Six Sigma Black Belts, who are basically project managers, but they're applying specific quality control and statistical techniques to running their projects. So I had to learn the material myself, and then classroom train. We had to, I think it was 80 hours of classroom training we had to deliver. So I had to learn everything well enough to teach it in a classroom to others, and then coach them through how to apply it in projects and how to execute those projects, and as a result, gain efficiency and quality improvements in our business. So that was fairly early in my career, and it taught me a lot, obviously, about leadership and coaching and working with others. It was one of the things that was really eye-opening, and something I learned that I love so much about that. When when you're teaching others, people really appreciate it, and that was so nice. I used to say this is the first job that people would thank me every day for doing my job, because they wanted to learn, they wanted to be successful, and so it was fun to be able to help others be successful in that way. So that was helpful, and then also it's really taught me to focus on facts and data, which is what Six Sigma is about in making decisions.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, that can really apply, like you were saying, with everything.
Mm-hmm.
That's very important. And I mean, you don't get to see that sort of thing happening on the large scale, which is very impressive. Throughout your career, who's been a mentor or a role model that made a lasting impact, and what's the best advice they gave you?
Great. So I've been so fortunate to have multiple mentors across my career, and I've learned very different things from each of them, and that's so valuable, and something I spend a lot of time doing now myself is mentoring other people, which is rewarding as well. But the things that stick with me that were good advice, an early mentor of mine at Caterpillar, he taught me a few things about sort of just the business world, because I came in with all these like skills and trying to learn how to apply them, but now navigating a world that was different than my experience, and also being a young female. Caterpillar was at the time very, very male dominant, and there were certain perceptions that I had to be aware of and overcome, like as far as like level of preparedness and professionalism. But one of the things that he taught me about going into any sort of discussion or meeting where I had the intention of making a proposal, like I had a lot of ideas as a young person, right? So I'd want to pitch these ideas and get acceptance of my ideas and get an opportunity to implement my ideas. But he taught me to first learn as much as I could about what the other person wanted. So first asking questions and understanding what were their priorities and their perspective and what did they want to gain. And then using that information to influence how I was going to present my idea to them and fit it to their needs or adjust it to adapt to what they were seeking. So that was really, really valuable. A lot of, listening skills, and I use that a lot in technology, because we're having to learn what people need and then build a technology solution for it. Those listening skills and getting used to asking questions and being on the receiving side and holding back from just promoting your own ideas was a really valuable lesson from that mentor.
Yeah, it's very reminiscent of what you see with the best salesmen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what they always say. They always say, see who your consumers are, see who you're targeting toward, see what their needs are, and then address that.
Yeah.
And I feel like instead of selling a physical item, you're almost selling something that's a little more valuable, but it's intangible.
Exactly. It's harder to describe, right? And for people to envision, right? So being able to get somebody to understand your vision, it'll help you if you can have some common ground and context to support that vision. He's also the person who encouraged me to get my MBA. I was thinking about doing an MBA, and I did it nights and weekends while I was working full time. And I was toying with the idea, and he simply said to me, June, in 2 years will have passed, and you'll either have an MBA or not. It's up to you.
Wow.
So I jumped in and did it.
That's very impressive.
Mm-hmm. And I know you mentioned this a little bit earlier, but what was it like to work in a field that was so male-dominated?
Yes, and I'm glad to report that it's changed a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It really, really has changed a lot. First, when I was in school at NC State, there were 20 males to every female in the engineering school, so that was one of the rare ones there. And then at Caterpillar, when I left there, I was a senior manager, and women at that level were only 5% of the management at Caterpillar. So I became very accustomed to being the only female in the room, which there's good things and bad things about overall, I think it actually opened up a lot of opportunities for me. I think earlier in my career, I felt like I had to prove myself more than my peers. I felt that I was kind of lucky to be let in the rooms, and that they would only let me stay if I could really demonstrate how much value I brought. So I think that's changed, though. I think it's changed a lot. I work with interns now. I've had a few college interns, and now an analyst who's a new grad on my team. And this summer I had one female intern, and we spent a lot of time talking about this. Not a lot, but a fair amount of time talking about this. And she and I talked about her confidence, which I felt like she often would open up with an apology. She'd be like, I'm sorry to bother you, but, or I'm sorry to ask this question, or, and so we talked about, not apologizing. Like you have every right to ask that question, and you have every right to have an opinion, and, and to have ideas and to share those ideas. You shouldn't apologize for that. But it kind of can be ingrained, I think, in people to feel like they need to ask permission to just show and share, their knowledge, and feel like they have as much to bring to the table as everybody else at the table.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, leading off of that a little bit, I personally like to say that maybe it's just a naive perspective, right? Growing up in a different society than that has been there in the past, but I like to see how really race and gender don't really hold you back anymore, right? It's something that in the United States, something that doesn't really affect you, right? As long as you show value, that you're willing to put in the effort, people see that and people recognize that. And I feel like that is such a big thing that has happened.
Yeah.
But on that other side of it, you have mentioned your position in international relationships and seeing those different cultures who may not actually have that same sort of situation, right? Where you mentioned that even though back at Caterpillar, there were not as many women in that field, you still showed value, and that's why you were still in that position. But are there those other places that don't even recognize these people and don't even see their value at all?
Sure. I mean, I think every culture has a different range of progress on those things, and it's very nuanced, because it could be that, some cultures that we think women don't have as many opportunities, in other ways they may have more. It's not like a straight line, like where you can grade that, this culture, females or minorities are more accepted, and this one is not. 'Cause often it's more nuanced in, there's a lot more countries that have female leaders. Well, we've never had a female president, right? But there's countries that we perceive as being less female friendly, or having less equality for women, but have actually had female leaders that have led their country. So it's not a simple thing to measure or to understand. It's so nuanced. But I think at the end of the day, we've made incredible progress. Now, at NC State, 30% of the engineering students are female, but it's not 50% yet. And so there's still ground to be covered, but absolutely it's improving, and we're on the right trend.
You've led and mentored so many professionals. What qualities stand out to you in someone who's early in their career but shows true potential?
So I think a big one is just an eagerness to learn. And I see this so much in the interns. I've been so impressed with the interns and analysts that both I've coached and also I've interviewed. I've been interviewing interns, and just amazing generation. And you guys are so much more prepared than I was. You're so much more worldly and have so much more understanding of the options for you. And and I think my biggest advice is dream big. my biggest limiter was myself. Like, I never knew what I was capable of, and didn't know what possibilities were available to me. But the interns that really stand out to me are eager to take on any assignment and learn. And I see that so much with your generation because of YouTube and ChatGPT and all these things. Like, I'll ask them to do something they've never done before, like build a SharePoint site and, build a workflow in Power Apps in the SharePoint site. See if you can figure out how to do that. And they go watch YouTube videos and they come back and they build SharePoint sites. So like, it's amazing. I think that's such an incredible skill that all of you seem to possess, is that ability to self-educate and absorb information and then turn that around and apply it to something, right away. And that will take you very far.
Wow. Looking back, is there something you wish you had done differently earlier in your career that shaped you and how you are now as a leader?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think, as I mentioned just a second ago, I wish that I did not create false limits for myself.
Yeah.
I think I really exceeded my own expectations very early on, and then I also struggled with imposter syndrome because of that for years, where I felt that I didn't deserve some of the opportunities I was given, and I think I probably held myself back. Or I know I held myself back because of that self-doubt. And I see my younger self so much differently today and wish I could tell her these things, because though I had an engineering degree, I never felt like I was like the best engineer. But what I didn't understand was that the reason I was getting opportunities to lead and manage early in my career was because I had some of these softer skills that not everybody has. And softer skills like the leadership things we've talked about, just, being collaborative, being good at making relationships, having people wanting to work with me, and then therefore I could bring people together and get things done. And I know now as a leader how valuable that is. But, as a 20-something-year-old or even 30-something-year-old starting my career, I felt like I shouldn't, that those opportunities should be given to somebody who was maybe more technically skilled than I saw myself, because I didn't realize that that's just one part of the equation.
Yeah.
And that's not the only thing that is valuable in an organization.
Yeah. A lot of people say comparison is the thief of joy, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you spend so much trying to improve, you always improve, and then there's always someone or something above you that you can change, something that you look at and you're like, man, I wish I was there,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's so hard to kind of tell yourself and come back, hey, what are my strengths?
Right.
What do I have?
Mm-hmm.
What makes me different? What makes me valuable?
Right.
And I feel like even today it's probably gotten even worse, right?
Yeah.
Especially with things like social media, right? It's just like you see all these things and you really don't know what's going on in their lives.
Exactly.
But at the same time, it's like it makes you think differently.
Right.
And the question is, how are you processing that?
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Do you take that as an insult, man, I really can't do anything about this?
Mm-hmm.
Or is that something that motivates you and drives you to
Yeah.
make that positive change?
Absolutely.
So what would you say is a great way to look at all these things when you have all these factors that kind of apply pressure to you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a hard thing. I mean, honestly, it's gotten easier as I've gotten, more mature, but it never goes away. Like I'm still my own worst critic, of like coming out of a meeting and feeling like I didn't say something cleanly enough or clearly enough, or, I let myself, get emotionally involved in something. There's just always ways that you can improve. But I think, having that same empathy that we talked about for others, having that empathy for yourself, valuing what you bring to the table, like that's what I would like I saw that I had skills, but I devalued those skills. Like I thought the other skills that I didn't have were more valuable. So really, I think taking care of yourself and being kind to yourself and allowing yourself to have setbacks, because a big decider in success is how well you're going to respond to those setbacks. Everybody has setbacks, and how you pull yourself up and keep moving is what's really going to be what people remember and what's going to get you towards your goals.
Yeah, I mean, connecting that to a little bit of what we see now as high schoolers, you said you managed a lot of interns, right? A lot of people that are coming up trying to see if they want to apply for a job here. What is something that you want to see on those like applications or what they have, right? Because like I'm saying, people are trying to compare themselves. They're just trying to meet the same standard, get on the same level, show who they are and get up there. But they just get so nervous. They feel so pressured.
Oh my gosh. I see it so much with the interns I enter. And the young people I meet who are making it to these interviews, they are all such high performers. They all have these resumes with 3.75, 3.8 GPAs. In their spare time, they're running nonprofits and they're doing all the things. And honestly, I worry about them because I just feel like it's so hyper competitive. I interviewed somebody who has doing a dual major. He's on a full ride at Georgia Tech, and he's dual majoring in finance and industrial engineering, and he's already interned at Microsoft. Wow. And he was speaking to me like a 35-year-old, like with that type of experience level and confidence, and he was just a great personality and everything going for him. But I kind of wanted to say to him like why don't you just do one of those degrees and like have a little fun, because I see them also worry so much about making a bad decision, like, I'm going to choose this path and I should have chose that path, and it's just going to like destroy any possibility of me having a great career. And that's not the case. The reality is, honestly, you guys are so competitive, and I know that because of that, you get disappointed a lot because you're going up against people with equal credentials for a few opportunities, right? And it happens probably weekly and, many times a year where you have tried for something and you just get barely squeaked out by somebody else because there's so many people so closely qualified. And the thing I think to keep in mind, and it must be so hard because I don't know how you guys do it, but would be that there's an endless amount of opportunities. And right now you're surrounded by all these people in the same point of your life that are all vying for the same roles and having the same credentials, but that's going to change. And what you're doing right now and how hard you're working is just laying all the groundwork for you to be successful. And there's actually, in my mind, no wrong answer to the path you take. And I recommend to my interns, like, be open to whatever comes your way. Don't focus on making this great decision on like, should I choose, this discipline or this discipline? Just get started, pick one, get started, get on a path, and let the opportunities come. Because going back to like the biggest thing, the worst thing you can do to yourself right now is limit yourself. To limit yourself to like, I want to do just this thing, and these are the 5 things I have to do to make that happen. And be open to the possibilities, because I think they're probably greater than you can imagine. And there's absolutely no wrong answer. If you keep working hard, doing your best, making connections through friendship, and staying in touch with others to both feed yourself emotionally and to help you create that network where you can help each other move forward, it's all going to work out. It really, truly is. The worst thing you can do is put so much pressure on yourself that you burn out. And that's going to set you back way more than making one small wrong decision here or there. take your time, be kind to yourself. You're putting in all the hard work. It's really going to work out one way or the other.
Yeah, that's great advice.
You've seen how innovation and leadership come together in business. What are 3 habits or skills students can start developing now to prepare for careers in tech or leadership?
So as I mentioned, the innovation mindset, be open to learning, like self-studying and applying and trying things out, right? Just being willing to try things and let it fail and try again. A lot of trial and error is what leads to innovation. And so I think a lot of young people sort of have that naturally, but maybe don't recognize how valuable that is. So 3. Another one would be maintaining your network. You know, you right now in your lives, you are so connected to others, and that's really powerful. It gets harder and harder the older you get, and the more you get, you know, kind of separated from your peers, because what's going to happen is you're going to, you know, be out in the world, and there's going to be a lot more diversity of age, of, you know, background, of career path. Like, you may be, it seemed like forever I was like the youngest person. There was all like in the room, and there was all these older people, and I didn't really have many peers at work and that kind of thing. So you're going to be separated from each other, but maintain those connections, especially with AI and social media. I think actual human connections with others, not just, I told some MBA students this recently, for them to stay connected to each other. It's like, and don't just stay connected to each other on LinkedIn. Stay connected on Instagram or whatever is more of a personal connection. I think those personal connections are going to become more and more valuable because everything's getting digitized. And also when you get into the workforce, everything, like, you're going to have plenty of professional connections, but it goes back to who would you trust? You're going to trust the people you know personally. And those are the people who are going to help you. When I made that career change from manufacturing to banking, it was through my personal network. It was from people that I knew from childhood and from my MBA school that helped me make that transition. So keep up those connections. That was 2, but they were long, so.
That was perfect.
That was perfectly. You've seen how innovation and leadership come together in business. Oh, my bad. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Many young people worry about taking risks or failing.
Mm-hmm.
How do you personally approach uncertainty and decision making in your career?
Yeah. Yes. So I think, I talked about this a little bit, about what I feel like the pressure you guys are under. And I think the big decisions I made in my career, like changing industries and, you know, some of the role choices I've taken, was more about my personal goals than my professional goals. And I think that's really important too. And it goes back to, you know, looking at the bigger picture and not being in such a rush to achieve certain things professionally, and balancing that with more, what do you want your life to look like? Because that's really what's going to make you happy. You know, your work is important. You spend a lot of time there, and you need to enjoy what you're going to do. And of course, you want to make enough money to, you know, support yourself and, you know, and possibly others. But there's a lot of means to that. There's a lot of ways to get there. But if you focus on only that, you may be a very unhappy person, and you may, like I mentioned, like lead to burnout, or, you know, just isolation, or all these things that nobody wants for their life. The biggest decisions I made was about, you know, when I changed industries, that's because I wanted to be in Charlotte, and I had just gone through a divorce. I was a single mom, and I wanted to come to where I had friends and family. And to do that, this isn't a manufacturing town. This is a banking town. So I had to figure out a way to become a banker when I had no experience. And it was in the middle of the financial crisis in 2009. Wow. Is when I made that switch. But that enabled me to have a life I wanted, enabled me to live where I wanted to live. It enabled me to work from home. In manufacturing, I was in manufacturing plant at by 7 a.m. every day, and there wasn't really a work from home kind of opportunity. I took a bit of a pay cut and a step back to change industries, but I saw my daughter get off a school bus every day and was able to juggle being a single mom and having a career. And as she got older and had more and became more independent, I was able to choose to take on more responsibility at work, and then ultimately choose to go back into the office. And that what took me to Wells Fargo. I made that choice that now, that she was entering high school, I can take on some bigger responsibilities. I can be in the office every day. And so I think focusing, those decisions weren't based upon a specific career path or career goals that I wanted to have. I never would have imagined that I'd end up in banking and doing what I'm doing, and I never had some sort of aspiration to work in risk and regulatory, probably kind of quite the opposite. But I let these opportunities come and seized the opportunities that had the most positive impact on my life and didn't sacrifice my life for the opportunities. And that's the best thing I've done in my career.
Yeah, that's been a common theme this whole time, something that really is starting to, I think, get ingrained in us.
Oh, did you heard this from other interviews?
No, I mean, I'm saying that, you're the first one that's touched on this. It's very interesting to look at that. It's a different perspective.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely great that you made decisions for yourself rather than like financial means.
Yeah, the rest will work out, honestly. Again, you guys are hardworking, educated, smart, driven. That's the career stuff is going to happen. It might not happen on the timetable you want it to, or it may not happen in the way you expected it, but that's going to work out. And the other things in your life, it will enable you to be successful in that way. And if you sacrifice those, it's just going to hurt you overall in meeting the goals that you want to achieve.
Wow.
Finally, what's one message you'd like to leave students with about finding purpose, adapting to change, and leading with impact?
I would say, choose something that sounds interesting to you, but know that there's no wrong choice. You can pivot. You can find niche areas. I engineering degree, but I do something very different. Most people around me aren't engineers, but one thing just kind of can lead to another, and after you've had some work experience, you'll start just feeling your way. What things interest you, where do you want to put your energy? Where you put your energy is where you're going to head, and it'll just naturally happen. So no wrong choices. Just get started and then just see where it can go from there, and I'm confident it'll work out.
What?
So one last question I think is just back to the career side. How has it evolved over the years? How has it changed, especially with Bank of America? I'm sorry, Wells Fargo.
How has what changed?
Just
the industry?
The industry. How has the industry changed? How have the people changed? How has your role changed?
Mm-hmm. Well, my role has changed over the years to be much less about what I personally know and can contribute to how I can enable others to contribute. And that's kind of any, I think, career progression if you're moving from a doer role to more of a leadership role. So the 13 meetings a day is because I don't personally do a lot of things. I help others do things. And so it's much less about my skills and what from like a output as far as like producing something and creating, fulfilling some assignment, and much more about how well I can motivate others and get them working together and keep things moving and provide direction and insight and recommendations to the folks who are actually doing the work. So I think that's the progression, is you start off doing a lot of the work and you move to enabling a lot of the work.
Yeah. I feel like that's always going to be the natural progression in life.
Mm-hmm.
And I really appreciate that. With that, I think we'll end it there. Thank you so
Okay.
much, Ms.
Thank
Taylor.
you. It was great
Executive
to
Director
meet you.
at Wells Fargo.
And it was great to